We're now live. Okay, cool. Should we do introductions? I haven't been introduced before.
I'm still munching on the pasty.
Right, okay, yeah.
Right then. So how many times you can fold a piece of paper? So
That last one doesn't count.
Well, what's the definition of fold? That's 7.
I told you 6. You can't do.
No, you said 3 or
piece.
you said 3 or 4.
And then I said you could do an A4 piece 6 because I've tried in the past.
See, that's nearly 7. If that was tissue paper, I reckon I could definitely manage 7. Not more than 8, I think, is what they're supposed to be. What it's supposed to be. Anyway, we've got more interesting questions for us.
Yeah.
You've also got the answer wrong. The answer is once, because after that you're folding it in quarters and eighths and sixteenths.
Depends how pedantic you are, really.
Did you say how many times can you fold a whole piece of paper or something like that?
Right, would you like an introduction? First of all, we have... Introduce yourself, Will.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I'm Will. Yeah, I'm senior designer. So I'm kind of responsible for sort of the level design side of things. So yeah, sort of iterating on the game mode, working out, well, basically working on the map in general, and yeah, that's pretty much. It's quite a broad area of responsibility, I guess, but that's pretty much what I'm working on at the moment.
There you go. Okay.
Hold on, I was going to say, yeah.
Oh, do you want to do closed cam?
There you are.
There you go.
Already happy.
So I'm James, and I'm the CEO here, and have been involved with the studio as Edgecase Games and in its previous iterations for a very long time, pulling the team together, pulling the game together, pulling the game idea together, all very exciting stuff. And even though some days the team may not like it, stick my oar in quite a bit. But yeah, mainly make sure that we keep afloat. So there you go. Right, so questions please, Bungle.
Right. How is the 32 build coming?
How is the what build? Sorry.
32-bit build.
32-bit build. I didn't know that was something we were working on at the moment exactly. So right now, we're still concentrating on the higher end machines and so on, and higher end graphics cards. It is true. So we will optimize as we go along and create different versions, but certainly it's a good point to raise as a roadmap. This is where you probably want our unfortunately sick technical director to answer that question, and he's not here today. So I can't answer that question now. However, do ask it on the forums, do ask via whatever route you can.
2 second delay.
Yes.
20 second delay.
Okay. Via whatever route you can, so that we can answer that. But it's a good one to bring up on the forum surrounding the roadmap, because that's the kind of thing where Dylan, our head of production, will be able to dive in and hopefully put it on the roadmap.
Right. How would you prevent pay to win on making financially available? King Jong-il lover.
That's always a good one, and I think that what we'll do is the best that we can to avoid any sort of accusations of pay to win in our game. Think about everything we do, and really try and ensure that we're doing the best possible practices. I think it will be down to a lot of the feedback we get from the community, from you guys, telling us if we've made a mistake, if we've tripped up somewhere and introduced something that that is considered pay to win. Because actually, there's a big spectrum of people and what they think pay to win is these days as well.
I think a lot of it comes down to our philosophy for designing the ships and designing the different abilities of the ships, is that we don't want any particular ship to be stronger in any way. Even the ones further down the upgrade tree, they might be more advanced ships with more tricky abilities to master. But we don't want to the basic ships that once we eventually introduce more advanced ships, we don't want them to be. We still want the existing ships to be viable, and yeah, so we're aiming to kind of keep everything within balance. And when you're unlocking options for your ships, they're not direct upgrades. They'll give you variants of abilities, and they'll give you options about how you adjust a ship to your play style. But there won't be kind of like hard upgrades. Yeah, we're hoping that everything. Certainly, some ships will counter other ships, but yeah, we're hoping to kind of keep all the ships relatively even in power.
Yeah, absolutely. And the things that we're looking at introducing as the kind of items people might pay for are mostly cosmetic. That's definitely the first port of call, and hopefully nobody can accuse cosmetic items of being paid to win. However, I have seen some cosmetics which you think, well, if that person did decide to paint themselves bright orange, that's probably not sensible, but that's more like pay to lose. But cosmetic items, special crew, all these various things. But our intention is to make sure that everything balances out nicely. But like we say, I think we're going to introduce various mechanics, various things we've seen in games that we think are fair, we've played that we think are fair, and hopefully with a lot of guidance from you as the community. I mean, one of the interesting things is that actually different, having travelled around the world and seen different people play in different places and what they think, obviously there's a different sentiment towards what is pay to win as you go into different countries around the world. So it might actually be if there's a server running somewhere else in the world, it actually has some slightly different mechanics sort of tuned to what one particular audience likes. That's way down the road, and just something that we've sort of been talking about, making sure that our systems allow for different people's desires. May seem odd to us, but certainly in some places in the world, it's actually preferred to be a slightly unbalanced in some ways. But there you go.
Yeah, I kind of imagine, well, from everything we've discussed so far, our payment sort of options we've been talking about kind of fairly similar to the ones in League of Legends. So you'll be able to maybe shortcut, or in World of Tanks, you'll be able to shortcut your way to a ship that's further down the tree, but with our philosophy of, and so if there's a specific ship that you really like the look of, you'll be able to shortcut your way to it rather than grinding your way to it. But that ship, as long as we follow our philosophy of not making later ships more powerful than the earlier ships, just different, then yeah, you won't be shortcutting. You won't be paying for power. You'll be able to pay to shortcut your way to more options. So.
Yeah, no paying for power, basically. Hopefully that helps. It's it's a debate that goes on and on and on in the office. Basically, we always talk about it. It's very important to us because it's not something you want a big label on your game saying pay to win, pay to win. That's bad. Okay, Bungle, what's next? I know you're trying to play and question us, so.
Will there be a way to ping?
Absolutely. We've got a. So right now right now the jump system that's in the game in the latest patch is close to what we're shooting for. We haven't managed to sneak everything in, but yeah, there's a whole new thing coming in that basically right now when you're bringing up the menu to jump to different sectors, it's a bit of an abstract thing and it's a little bit confusing to use. So we're going to kind of replace that with basically we'll maximize or bring up a more detailed map where you'll actually be able to, while you're holding that down, you'll be able to mouse over enemies and mouse over the scoreboard to check out like what upgrades people have got, that kind of stuff. You'll be able to ping on the map. Eventually, once we get this screen in, we'll be able to offer more kind of comprehensive jump options. So when you're jumping from, let's say, your home base into Sector Alpha, we'll be able to give you a bunch of different jump destinations within Sector Alpha that you'll be able to pick from. So if you, all kinds of things, there are a few things on my list of stuff that I think is kind of wrong at the moment. And one of the things is kind of giving players vision options, and once we've got vision on the mini map and on the map worked out, so you're more aware of where your enemies are, you'll be able to make more strategic decisions on how you approach these battles. So maybe you'll have your kind of your assassins and your hunters jumping in close to the enemy, while your snipers might pick a similar a spawn point that's kind of further, jump point that's further away. But yeah, basically this map screen that is going to replace the kind of the jump widget is kind of the core to a lot of the new stuff that we're bringing in. So as soon as we got that in, the jump system will improve massively. Hopefully, just the general flow and teamwork of the game will improve massively, because you'll be able to sort of ping for backup, ping to tell people where you're going, and I also kind of want to experiment with maybe a new ability for a kind of a scout ship, which would be kind of like dropping a jump beacon. So maybe one ship would have an ability where they can drop this jump beacon that lasts for a certain amount of time, and while it's there, then the rest of their team can use that as a jump destination. So you'll be able to kind of coordinate ganks and things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we want to do, and this kind of map screen is all kind of central to it. But yeah, once we get that in, then we're definitely going to have pinging.
Right. So a question just come up is, will you increase the number of players, which we've had last week? In addition to recapping briefly on that, I have had a question: will you decrease the number of players to 2 or 3 v3?
Interesting. My personal feeling is that the map right now, it feels better with more players. I think the situation we're in right now, though, is that we're limiting it to 10 players because we don't have a huge player base. I think the game kind of plays out best with about 7 players on a team. But because we've got such a kind of a small player base for the time being, then we're kind of restricting the numbers so that we've got more servers going and more games going, and people can get into game that much easier. But it's something we definitely kind of want to investigate expanding on further.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of smaller maps, I think smaller number of players, I think you would introduce a new map. I think that's one of the things.
Yeah.
And you do that when the time is right. We're not going to do that soon. We're not going to suddenly make new maps for different player sizes and so on. We've got to, and we want to make this work really well with what we've got, and then we can start exploring different maps and different modes. As people asked us the same kind of question about that last week.
I must say though, I'm a big League of Legends player, and I play a hell of a lot of ARAM or random or mid, because I just love the kind of the in-your-face team fighting. So I mean, eventually, somewhere further down the line, I'd like to kind of play around with making something kind of along those lines, something that's more focused on just all-out combat, and a really kind of just like a simpler mode that's entirely kind of focused around combat. I think that would be interesting, and that would probably work with a fewer number of players. But yeah, that's for further down the line, once we've got a good player base and we can start thinking about stuff like that.
Right. Any plans to move the? Sorry, I'm getting feedback. I'm hearing myself through. It's very confusing. Any plans to move the crew chat away from upgrade over? I think I answered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That kind of leads me on to something else that we haven't actually started doing yet, but what we're planning to get in is basically, at the moment, the resources we've got are flat for the entire team. So you capture the mining facilities, they give you resources, and it's the same resources for everyone on the team. So we're going to bring in kind of resource rewards for what you're doing within the game. So if you get a kill, you'll get some resources. If you get an assist, you get some resources. Captures. So you'll have certain members of the teams who might be carrying their teams, and they'd be getting more powerful faster than the rest of the team. So because of this change, we're still going to have the mining resources kind of ticking in for your whole team, but we'll have bonuses for the players who are actually kind of doing the legwork. So as a result of this, we're kind of planning to basically simplify the whole thing. We'll only show you the resources you've currently got. We'll show you the levels everybody else is, but you don't really need to know how many resources everybody's got. So that'll all be kind of a lot simpler for people to track. Yeah, so that I think yeah, that stuff in the corner that's clashing with the portrait, yeah, it's a bug, and it's yeah, it's going to change.
There's definitely not the right place to have the portrait go over the top of anything anyway. So that just needs sorting out basically. I'm pretty sure it's in the bug database as a must sort kind of thing. Okay, Bungle. Next question.
Now that ships keep orientation during jumps, can we please get the compass bearing on the HUD?
That's a good point. I think give us a shout on that one. You know,
One thing that I've been moaning about for ages, and I'm told that it's basically it's causing massive performance issues, and that's why it was removed. Is your directional indicators for players on the minimap.
I think that's
I,
what
right. Okay.
There's a compass at the top as well. I don't think it's ever worked, to be honest. But yeah, the directional indicators on the minimap are causing massive performance issues, and we just haven't had time to look at it yet. But it's a big thing that I keep moaning about.
Yeah, I think we'd all
yeah,
agree. It's
yeah.
it's amazingly handy, even you just glance at the minimap to know where everybody's pointing.
Yeah, I mean, sort of your orientation on the map was something that was playing on my mind. Previously, we had when you jump to a new sector, it would align you to the direction of the spawn points that you were jumping to, which as a result, I felt disconnected people very much from the actual structure of the map, and it didn't feel like a coherent space. So that's why we've changed to you keeping your orientation when you jump, and it also kind of opens up stuff like if you're panic jumping and you don't have time to orient yourself to where you're going, then you're gonna have to do it at the other end, and it's intended to kind of get people to or it's intended to be advantageous to prepare for the destination you're going to before you do the jump. But yeah, totally. The lack of direction on the directional indicator on the minimap is kind of making it not work desperately well right now. So yeah, that's something I'm pushing to get fixed soon.
Okay. I speak louder, apparently I can't be heard very well. It's probably because the actual microphone that's in the camera isn't with
Yeah.
What is the deal with the handles that comes out the front of your saddle?
Just talk to Dan, the lead artist, on that. So at the moment, there will be an effect there. That is a placeholder for an effect that he said should not have been checked in. So there you go. You're seeing something. This is open development for you. It's something that shouldn't be there, but it made it through. And in the next version, we'll have it gone, or actually the effect that should be there. There you go. Because I did actually look at that. It's like, no, we've got fire-breathing assassins. Or steam breathing anyway. So there you go. It'll be fixed. Great one for Will.
Absolutely. This is like my number one thing to get in. This is what we're massively missing right now. Is we at the moment we don't have the code set up to support this stuff, but basically we're going to have two different types of base defenses, and they're going to be integrated into all the different types of stations in some way or other. We're going to have fighter defenses, which they're going to have launch bays, and as soon as you approach to a station, then fighters are going to come out and attack any enemies that are within a certain range of the station. And they're going to basically, the damage from those fighters is basically the damage from those fighters is going to be kind of split among all the people who are kind of attacking that or trying to capture that base. So we'll have a little bit of damage that's kind of split among all the attackers. So if you're on your own, you'll take more damage from the fighters, and it will be split amongst all of you. Then we'll have these kind of turret entities, which they'll each have their own little kind of areas of influence where their own little ranges, and I guess the way I really want those to work is if you imagine the sentry turret from the engineer in TF2. So they'll kind of have a little targeting laser on them, and they'll have a little idle animation where they're panning backwards and forwards, so you can kind of see how long their range is. And basically they'll just work really simply. They'll target the first ship, enemy ship that comes into range of them. They'll kind of snap to it, they'll do a little wind-up animation, and then they'll start firing shots. And I think these things are probably going to have quite a long range, but the shots they're going to fire will be doing quite a bit of damage, but they'll travel quite slowly, so that they'll be kind of ineffective at range. If you're in a flagship, you'll be moving quite slowly, so maybe they'll start hitting you sooner, but if you're in a smaller ship and they start firing you at a long range, you'll be evading their shots really easily, as long as you're not flying straight at them. And yeah, so basically the intention is certainly with the home base, I kind of want to eventually turn that into almost like a boss battle where you've got all these turret emplacements on it that you'll kind of want to take down, and then also with the same kind of thing, we can start having destructible elements within the environment. So we can have like armor plates, maybe over like a kind of a central core on the station, and maybe you'll have to blast away these armor plates, and then that will expose the weak spot on the station to allow you to start destroying the home base station. Ultimately, we want you to kind of destroy the enemy base rather than capture it. At the moment, it's very, very placeholder and not at all elegant, and it's my biggest bugbear right now, to be honest.
But it works. It works, but yeah, we want it to be better.
It's not good.
No, you want it to be perfectionist. That's fine.
Actually, I mean, I could expand on that. Yeah, we're kind of, I mean, that was all just kind of talking about the big stuff for the home base, but to extend that, we're kind of talking about we'll have like kind of the launch bays that are on the sides of the mining facilities. They'll be sending out mining drones, and they'll kind of almost be doing like a little kind of gathering. If you imagine like the gatherers in something like Command and Conquer or StarCraft, they'll almost work like those little kind of resource bases. And eventually, once we have the abilities to kind of combat fighters, you'll maybe be able to take down the little mining drones on an enemy kind of mining facility just to deny them resources. So there's a bunch of stuff we're planning, and it's making its way in. Base defenses I'm hoping to get in really soon, but I'm not sure exactly on how soon.
There you go, Bungle. New question.
What is the intended length of the game, and what is the patched up to
So we've been aiming for around about 20 minutes as our sort of guide time, just on the basis that we sort of feel that you want to get a good sort of rhythm of games going, so you can have a few games of a good few games of an evening. Get a couple of games in at lunchtime if you're able to play your games at lunchtime, things like that. So that's kind of our sort of feeling for the length of game. However, it will evolve depending on how the game mode works, what people like, what the underlying metrics come back with on the way people play, and of course, how potentially we might find that people work out ways of being incredibly aggressive and finishing a game really quickly, because that happens in some games as well. Is that they can push, the mode pushes back, but they're able to push really hard. So we'll see. So
it's a difficult thing to balance though, because I mean we've got very very slow ships, we've got very large maps, so, and we want there to be some back and forth. Even the patch that we've just released a new patch that I think we've kind of done a bit of a knee-jerk balance too far the other way, but previously. One team would kind of get the advantage and they'd just get so far ahead that the other team could do nothing about it. As a result, we were seeing really quick games, but it wasn't desperately fun when you were losing in that situation. So the new patch, now that we've kind of almost balanced it so it's really hard to get ahead, we're seeing longer games as a result of it, but I think they're more satisfying for everyone even when they're losing. So it's gonna take some balancing. I think we're gonna see things change a lot once we get the base defenses in, and once we've got you taking out the enemy base, and once we see how that affects things, then we can start really kind of focusing on game length. But I think right now we're just trying to get the game flow feeling right.
Yeah, make sure the key for us is to make sure it's satisfying. You know, even if you're on the losing team, you have some satisfaction out of the game. One thing that you just don't want to have is a game that's going on and on forever, and you are pretty clear you're going to lose. That's probably the worst scenario in any game. So balancing to make sure it's satisfying. You could even have something where it looks like a loss, which is where we've gone now. That potentially means that the game will stretch a bit long right now. So we've got to see how that plays. I mean, the patch has only just gone out. Let's see how it plays. We've got a new version that we're working on in the office, which will drop out pretty quickly after this one, I think. And again, that will have some rebalancing in it. We'll see, but it's all about everybody playing, and then we can see what kind of the numbers are coming back. If we see that all the games have gone up by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then, you know, whichever one that is, then we know whether we've gone too far.
But I think, I mean, one of the primary motivators for going almost too far the other way, something we were very conscious of, was it was just no fun to lose in the previous patch, because you get so far behind, you stand no chance, and a lot of people were just quitting games, and I can't really blame them for that. So we've really kind of tried to balance it in such a way that you always have a good game. But yeah, I think it almost feels like we've gone too far the other way.
But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. One of the things about, whilst we're talking about quitting, just briefly, is that at the moment, obviously quitting, it doesn't matter. You can quit if you like. But when you've got progression mechanics in the game, and you, by quitting, you sacrifice progression mechanics, then that will have an influence too. And people may know.
I was going to, following on with the point you were going, I was going to comment on the game that I was in, but it's over now because I couldn't get your attention quickly enough.
Oh right, it was that was only a few seconds ago, but there you go.
Anyway, has there been any talk about in-game voice comms?
Repeat the question.
So Bungle just said, has there been any talk about in-game voice comms? So we talk about voice comms a lot and about all the external voice comm options. Bungle is a particular specialist on this, but in-game voice comms, from what I believe, are generally pretty expensive to run as a service. So it's something that we'll look at over time, but we'll have to take it into consideration in terms of its cost. And I think that's one of the major things that means that quite a few games you'd think would have in-game voice comms, but surprisingly don't. That's mainly down to cost, I believe. So we'll see. It's something that obviously could be good. Although I must admit, on some games I've played, I really wanted to turn it off.
I'm kind of hoping that if we can offer a comprehensive enough kind of ping communication system once we bring in this detailed map, then hopefully you'll have all of the stuff you need to communicate everything you want to about the state of the game and where the enemies are, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully voice comms won't desperately be needed. So, well, we'll see. I think that the ping system should be comprehensive enough that you can get across your message without the need for voice. Next question.
It just occurred to me that I can actually use my microphone as well, and therefore everyone can hear me quite clearly and easily.
There you go.
So this is actually again answered, but we'll ask it anyway. Are we going to see any new ships or be able to upgrade the current ones within the early access?
Absolutely, totally yes. We will be introducing some of the upgrade. We say upgrade, actually they are options. So it's not that you're making your ships better and better, you're unlocking various options for your ships. Those we're going to be starting those coming out during December. So it's December now, so that's not very far away. And then there will be some new ships in January, and those new ships will have more options available for them. Got to stop saying upgrade. More options available for them to unlock. So you have more unlock options, more ships. We'll start rolling those out during December, more in January, etc., etc., etc. So absolutely, definitely. we know that everybody wants more spaceships. More spaceships is what is going to be fun. They're trying out all the various different types of spaceships that we've got a long list of here.
So my point of view on it is a little different to yours. I mean, you're the businessman. You need to get the ships up.
No, it's not that.
I really,
I like more spaceships
of
myself
course,
personally.
of course. My point of view is that we need to get the core 6 ships feeling right and feeling balanced, so we've got a solid base to work from and then expand. So yeah, you can expect to see the existing ships change well. I think we've got their roles fairly well defined now, but the options they get may well change drastically as we sort of bring in and out different upgrades and try stuff out and discover that giving I don't know, a hunter a specific type of turret option is a terrible idea.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's going to take us a little while to kind of learn what our upgrade philosophy is going to be, because there's a lot of talk about giving ships different options, but there's also kind of a lot of talk about not wanting to break the essence of the ship. So you'd give a ship options, but it would still those options would still very much it would still fulfill the same kind of role on a team.
Yeah. No, that's definitely the case. And yeah, that doesn't doing more ships, doing the upgrades, the side grades, options for the ships. That doesn't mean that the current ships aren't going to keep changing. To your point about getting those right, we're not going to suddenly say they're done and then move on. There's going to be more and more to do. We have constant conversations about whether we've just not quite got the right ability on a certain ship, and it could be changed. So yeah, those things are going to happen too. Okay, next question.
So I was just
Okay.
there's some complaints about the one voice on.
Actually, I've just got a little side point just regarding new ships. If you've got any ideas for ships that you think would be cool, we've got a section on our forum where people can just suggest cool ideas for ships.
Yep.
And the more ideas, the better. Yeah, if we see stuff we like, then it's
Yeah.
And any ideas you've got, just throw them at us. It's cool.
Yeah. And lots of reference points. You know, even if it's just you don't know what the ship might be, let us know as well. It's like they could do this. You know, and we can work out what that might bolt onto. You might be just missing an ability for another ship that's nearly formed but is missing something.
Yep.
Get a minimum or number of bases.
It doesn't seem like a hard thing to add. This was something that we were talking about. Once we bring in this map screen again, and you'll be able to mouse over stuff, then we'll be showing you your current resource amount, and maybe if you mouse over it, you get the resource amount per second. And yeah, we've been talking a lot about how we can give people things like tooltips on their weapons and things like that. So if you just jump into game, you can actually kind of check what your abilities do rather than just fire them randomly and see what they do. And I'd really like to get that information available while you're in game. I mean, we can provide a lot of this in the front end in the hangar, but it would be really nice to have mouse overs, and we can't do that while you're actually aiming your turrets. But if we have bring up this overlay map, maybe you just kind of hold down tab to bring it up, then you'll be able to mouse over stuff and get more information. So.
Right, sorry. It is very hard to read all my notes and to play at the same time.
We need a fourth person.
We'll different.
Well, we'll have a sniper of a different manufacturer, but every ship will be unique. So the sniper from the what are they called? Zarek Industries.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the same ship as the sniper. It's going to have a different. It'll have its own way of playing, and it'll have its own strengths and weaknesses, and maybe its main cannon might be similar, but it'll have a bunch of different abilities.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. If you listen to Jim, the creative director on this, is that it's not like we'll go, well, this manufacturer's got a hunter. This manufacturer's got a hunter. We'll just cut and paste the parameters and then change a few for the other looking ship. It's actually that you have this manufacturer as a hunter. This manufacturer has something that may has a way that people might recognise some of the cities,
But it's
but yeah, it's a desolator. Actually, it does this and this, which are completely different, and it may be bigger or smaller as well. You know, and these so they are going to have individual. You might find that one particular manufacturer sometime doesn't seem to have a sniper in its roster at all. It's like it just doesn't have one, but that's just because it's biased towards other things.
Likewise, yeah, certain manufacturers would be biased towards heavier ships, so maybe one of the manufacturers might have a much larger percentage of big stuff like the flagship, whereas another one might specialize in smaller stuff.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps answer that question. It's a question we get asked a lot.
Yeah, I think, essentially the ships are all kind of like, every ship will be its own kind of, it'll be its own, it'll be essentially like the champions in League of Legends. You pick the sniper, and it's the, what's the name? United... USR. United... Yeah. Anyway,
we're getting used to these. We've had an internal code name for so long that we're just getting used to the correct new names.
Okay, so the USR sniper is the sniper, and then the rig sniper would maybe be called something else. Maybe it's called the railgun ship. That's a really stupid name, but
yeah, and they need proper better names, some of them as well, because sniper isn't really a name as such, but that's going to come to.
Yep.
Okay, next question.
Right.
So teams, it will come earlier than guilds. So in terms of putting teams in, we clearly need a way of people being able to. Form teams and join as friends. And I think that's probably the first implementation. Is some way of people saying, "Well, I want to play with my friends, and I don't necessarily want to just be randomly put together." So we're going to do that. It's in the roadmap. I think in the roadmap for kind of February time, but don't quote me on that. Have a look yourself. I can see somebody moving around with the roadmap at the moment. Maybe going to tell me, but anyway, that's the kind of time frame we're looking at as some implementation of friends and friends playing together. But one of the things we've got to look at with friends playing together is that what happens to the other guys who have a whole team of highly organised friends playing together. So we need to make sure that people are clearly flagged as friends playing together, because it's definitely the case that a well-organised team can go for the win in a much more dramatic way. So we've got to make sure that's fair too, because you don't want to be on the losing end constantly of teams joining in, and then working towards I suppose guilds and leagues of people playing against each other. That's definitely further down the line. It's not something to be taken lightly, but it's absolutely, totally something we want to do. It's really important, but it isn't the quickest thing to implement, and to implement well. Lots of people do different ways of implementing it, and we would hope to try and get it right. Not necessarily first time, but try and get a good stab at it and do a good job of it, so that people can have fun with that, and hopefully involve I suppose what I'd call a meta game around what guilds are doing between them as well, and that hints at some things which again are further down the line, but I think would be great fun to play. Okay, next question, Bungle.
Right, just a quick note. This is apparently getting some stuff. It should be noted that yes, we do have some issues with our bandwidth at the moment. We hope that these will be fixed. Okay, question. Is there any more plans for the map to make it seem less empty, or the sniper to have its own mechanics, such as hiding behind?
So the map right now is very, very early stages. I've actually got, I'm actually kind of reworking, I think it's Alpha Sector that's being reworked right now, because at the moment Alpha and Beta are literally just rotated versions of one another. So that's being changed at the moment. So we're still kind of working out what we're doing with the spaces. I'm kind of happy with the way sectors alpha and beta are kind of playing out in a lot of ways. The sniper, it's the I think the main thing that I'm finding challenging is making a kind of a believable looking scene whilst offering enough cover so that the sniper isn't overly dominating. It's an interesting challenge. Making space environments is it's a difficult thing because space in reality is very 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 sparse. Whereas if we had a very very sparse environment, it's yeah, it's massively advantageous to have a long range ship, and we really want that kind of those. We really want short range ships to be a viable option, so we need lots of cover so that to give them plenty of chances to approach the longer range ships. But we need not so much that longer range ships are totally screwed. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. But yeah, the environment is very, very early stages right now. I've got a lot of plans. So, but at the moment, right, I'm kind of reworking the alpha sector. So it's not going to be in an asteroid belt. We've got these new sort of angular, jagged asteroids. So I'm playing around with making kind of a. It's really hard to describe. I guess it's kind of like a big kind of almost like a crisscrossing ravine kind of structure to that sector.
Looks fantastic. I'm very excited about it.
It's a very very different thing, and we haven't done a great deal of testing on it right now. So it remains to be seen how advantageous it is to different ships. But I kind of want to make alpha and beta sector differently structured so that maybe snipers would prefer to go to alpha because it offers them nicer lines of sight, whereas maybe the assassins might want to go to beta because there's all of the asteroids behind and plenty of ambushing opportunities. So yeah, we want to play around with stuff like that. Sector Gamma, where the gas facility is at the moment. I think in the build that went out today, the patch that went out today, you'll notice there's a hell of a lot less asteroids in there. I kind of threw in a load of cover because that was kind of the general feeling at the time was that we needed to build up cover so that because it was supposed to be we wanted to make a more complex environment. I felt that worked quite so well. I've just removed a bunch of the asteroids for now, but I think ultimately what I want to do with Gamma is remove all of the asteroids and have lots of kind of like little man-made stations that are they're not going to be things to capture, but we kind of also want to play around with the concept of kind of neutral mini objectives that you can get to. So once this is all coming back into. Once we get individual resources for players, we can potentially have little kind of turret stations out in space that you can go and take out. So almost kind of like a kind of concept of jungling from League of Legends. So you'll have these little mini objectives that you can kill to get a reward, but they'll fight back. And so I kind of almost want to turn Gamma into the jungle, if you see what I mean. Maybe we'll have some of that in Alpha and Beta as well, but I think Gamma is going to be going through some iterations, to say the least. Definitely.
The other question was about clouds. So on space clouds, which we sometimes refer to as space push, one of the things that we want to do is get a good implementation of rendering such a thing that you can fly in and out of with your ship, which is going to take some experimentation because we did some very early experimentation on this and it didn't look great.
It looked awesome from a distance. It was just as soon as you put your face through it, it went wrong.
Yeah, so we've got to get that right because it's not a simple system. It's a simple system to get something in there that looks okay, but then what you've got to do is actually make sure that that volume that you're traveling through produces the correct results in terms of being in it but seeing out of it and having reduced vision and so on. Definitely, again, it's on the roadmap, I believe. I'm not sure what it's been called on the roadmap. I think it's been called Space Clouds, maybe Space Push. Have a look, and if you really like that, you can upvote it and make comments on it. But it's in there, and it will give Will more tools to be able to create more interesting things in the levels. No doubt about it. There's going to be some interesting stuff coming there. We just got to make it look good, and also considering we've got to make sure, as was talked about earlier, is make sure the game scales onto different PCs and not just high-end PCs. We can't just go, yeah, we'll just throw loads of particles at the problem, because that means that people who are playing on lower-end PCs with the detail turned down either won't get to see the effect very well, or it'll look really bad, or even worse, they'll actually be able to, you turn the detail down and then be able to completely game the effect and then not, and be able to see people or something terrible like that, which would be no good either. So we've got to get that right.
One thing I've been thinking about, which is, it's a very different thing, is once we get these destructible elements within the levels, then we can have kind of once we get these destructible elements within the levels, we can have smaller asteroid fields, so sort of little dense little fields of kind of smaller destructible asteroids that maybe each one will take a shot and then it pops. So we can have, and I want to play around with kind of an evolving landscape. So maybe the shields on the forward stations, maybe each one of those panels on it becomes destructible, and you can start shooting panels off the stations and things like that. And I'm hoping that the turret system that we're getting in will just be able to remove the turret element of it and just apply that kind of destructible element.
I like this idea. Especially I can think about that on those shields. That's really
really
good.
So snipers that are using that as cover, then you can chip away their cover and
make a hole through it and then just poke your gun through as well. So
indeed,
use it to your advantage as well. I like that. That's cool. Okay, next question, Bungle.
Right, just a note for those of you who can hear us, I'll do the draw of the raffle in 5 minutes at 8 o'clock. This is for a free top-tier founder pack key for Steam. Type !raffle if you'd like to enter. Will there be any PvE modes within the plotline?
PvE. So PvE again. One of the things that I think this was mentioned last time as well, is that we appreciate that some of the bigger games out there have introduced more elements, and so that you can go out and try your rigs or actually play something which has bots in it, or some of them are even introducing something that's almost like a whole single player campaign on it of its own right. Those things are not cheap to make, and we've been really making sure we concentrate on the core gameplay experience, as we talked about from the very top, is like making sure that core, that very nub of the game works really well. So that doesn't mean that we won't do it, it's just going to take some time for us to get to that. I think the first sort of elements of this we've discussed are, we've looked at, say, for example, MechWarrior Online. It's got its testing grounds where I can jump in, I can go and play with my ship, and there'll be some other ships in the world which will be initially inert, but it means that I can go and test out my current configuration, zip around the map, blow them to pieces, they'll respawn, I can blow them to pieces again, but I can test out my ship. That's almost like the very, very start of what becomes PvE. But then you start to think about, you need AI and so on, and so these aren't insubstantial things to do, because our ships are they have quite interesting behaviors and so on. It's not insurmountable, it's doable, but AI programming is a pretty big job to do, and to do well. So it's something that is a desire, it's a want. We know it actually can really enhance people's ability to play the game. And of course, one of the other things is that some people just don't like playing versus other people, or at least for a while they might not. So they might want to just have a bit of solo playtime. So again, it's on the longer term roadmap beyond the one that we've currently got published, I would say. Will, you look like you were going to add something to that.
I was just thinking about the fact that, I mean, if we were talking about bots, but sort of AI controlled sort of snipers or flagships or hunters, that's a hell of a lot of work, because each individual ship is going to need a very, very specific AI. So it's basically the same amount of work for each ship. So it quickly adds up, and as we add more ships, it's going to be it would be a huge job to develop AI for every ship. So yeah, it's not really something that I've ever thought about, to be honest.
No, absolutely. when we're a bigger, badder team, bad in a good way.
You have to tell me if you're moving them on,
Sorry.
otherwise you'll be named James.
Okay.
Oh, right, okay, I see.
Why did you choose a Russian ship captain?
Is he Russian? I don't know. Well, one of the things that we did in terms of different captains is just, the artist produced different styles. He actually at one point had a whole variety of different hats on him. And the lead artist was sat there clicking through lots of different hats and going, and then particularly when he put the hat he's got on today, it looked really good, and everybody went, yeah, that suits him, that looks really good. But yeah, he had all kinds of different hats from all different nations and no hats, and it just looked right. And that meant that once that looked right, Jim, the creative director, said, "Oh, we've got to get the right voice for this guy," and so it sort of snowballed from there. So it's about picking the right flavour for the right person, and sometimes I'm sure we'll pick specific choices, and we'll make specific choices based upon, I don't know, some particular voice actor we want, or a piece of artwork, or something we've been inspired by. But this one was, it seemed to be an organic way it devolved, I think, amongst the team. But we like him a lot. He's very cool.
I have a question.
How do you
fire effectively? Oh, okay.
is there any
any plans to implement FLAC so that it works properly, such as locking out missiles, fighters, and decloaking cloaked ships with impacts?
Yeah, so this is another one of the systems which we haven't fully fleshed out yet. Is interacting with other types of abilities. So we've kind of got different classes of abilities. We've got kind of your direct cannons and lasers. Then we've got missile systems, which things like the assassin can stealth, and then they'll lose the target, and you can evade those right now. But we want to kind of play around with that some more and have more things that affect their lock-ons. And yet, fighters are definitely something that's a very rough implementation right now. We've been talking about having kind of anti-fighter abilities. So maybe capital ships might have kind of turbo laser batteries that they can activate, and then they kind of take down a certain amount of the fighters that come within range, things like that. So yeah, there's definitely something that we're talking about, and we've got plans for in the future.
Yeah, I mean I know the FLAC came up in conversation, meeting. I think it was either end of last week or beginning of this week. Definitely, where the FLAC is not doing exactly what FLAC does. Is even the name of FLAC makes you think, but that's going to be good versus fighters. That's going to be good versus missiles. And at the moment, it doesn't do that. So yeah, that is the intention. I know from hearing the designers talk, that's what they want it to do. At the moment, it's a matter of grabbing some code time, which is definitely chewed up, making sure the game mode works well. So it's we're a small team. We haven't got lots and lots of people here, and we'll get to that as soon as we can.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. It's definitely on the list. There you go.
Okay. You didn't tell me you were going to rotate.
Sorry, we keep forgetting.
Am I allowed to just talk about something that we might not get asked about, and it's the thing that I wanted to talk about?
You can. I have a question to go first.
Okay.
Nearly.
Quick question. A few chats ago, playtests or dev Q&As, you told us that it was discussed the possibility of hats on ships.
Yeah, so that wasn't me. That was Jim. And are you aware of this conversation?
Yeah, it was something that was discussed, and everyone thought it was amusing. And it was funny when I discussed it with Jim. I was saying, just imagine how cool it would be to be flying a flagship with long flowing Wookiee hair, and the Wookiee hair would like ripple when you got shot and stuff. And Jim seemed.
Had you all been drinking at the time?
Well, Jim seemed to think that this was too silly, but for some reason, hats he was down with. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. It was discussed before, and everyone thought it would be an amusing idea. But I think our focus certainly.
Certainly right now, it's not on hats for spaceships.
We're not going to be introducing outrageous stuff until we've kind of solidified the universe and got our kind of lore in place is all going to be fairly serious to start with, and then we'll start adding the outlandish stuff, I guess.
Yeah, well, yes, it's an interesting one. I know Jim brought it up a couple of times in conversation before, but I don't know where he was going with that. He was probably thinking some way into the future.
I mean, I'm a big fan of. I've spent far too much money on League of Legends. I buy a lot of skins, and I'm a big fan of the ridiculous skins. So I'd love to see some ridiculous rainbow skins like the arcade skins in League. Or
Well,
but,
as you say, ridiculous. I can imagine people go wanting to get their ships with a kind of Chris Foss look, and those colours are almost rainbows down their ships, and they look pretty cool. So. Yeah, we shall see. There's a lot of ideas coming up at the other end with the artists about where sort of skins and looks for different looks for ships could go. But yeah, hats not so much, not so soon. I think that's the short version.
We've got a comment on that from Hypergrip, who we all know and love. Now with fully animated Wookiee hair, because we're not satisfied until your FPS is below 1.
That's right. Yeah, because that's what would happen. Definitely.
yeah.
Well, we haven't actually got the foreskin pack out. But do you want to sort of mention that?
So I mentioned earlier that there's updates coming. So on the sort of, I suppose I'd call it mid-December, but around mid-December, around the 18th, I think we're aiming to get out our sort of first pack of skins that people can put on their ships with something that's beyond a skin. It's actually an exclusive model variant of one of the ships. It doesn't change the stats or anything like that, but it certainly looks very, very cool. So that's coming too. But I don't want to say too much about it. I'll just foreshadow it slightly like that, I think, for now. And I will actually say at this point, Will, what is it you wanted to talk about?
Oh, what I wanted to talk about was the changes we're making to the gas facility. Well, just generally the game mode stuff. I know we're running short on time now, so I'll just make it short but sweet. So one of the things, it hasn't made it into the patch that we released today, but it's something that we're testing at the moment, is we've actually completely changed the way the gas facility works. So the gas facility in today's build is worth a lot less than it was in yesterday's build. But in the current live version, it's literally just a big resource it's like a big version of a mining facility. But in the new version we're testing, we've actually removed the resources from it completely, and we've kind of turned it into basically the team that captures it gets a temporary buff, and it shuts down. So it'll come online 8 minutes into the game, 10 minutes into the game. We're still playing around with that number. And when it comes online, the idea is that everybody jumps to the middle, everybody fights over it, and they get this buff. And the buff will it'll give them some movement speed, it'll give them some ability to capture stuff faster. They'll basically kind of act as like overdrive fuel. So maybe it'll give them some cooldown reduction. We're kind of playing around with exactly what it does. But the idea is that everybody will want to prioritize fighting over this when it's available. So it'll come online, everybody will fight over it, the winning team will capture it, or the winning team of that fight will capture it. And then if that team's ahead, they can use the buff to help pressure the team and maybe close out the game. Or if the team's behind, they can use the buff to help recapture some of the lanes and sort of get some dominance over the rest of the map. And one of the things that I really don't feel works with the existing resource gas facility is the fact that once it becomes available, it's always available. And so as a result, the beginning of the games I think work really well because everybody's focused on alpha and beta, fighting over that. But then once gamma becomes available, you've suddenly got three things that your attention is split between. And I just feel like the game kind of it works up until that first fight is over, and then the game kind of gets messy from there. So the new version basically once it's captured, it shuts down and it'll become available again 5 minutes later, and it'll give the winning team a temporary buff. But hopefully this change is gonna go some way to kind of giving the game that kind of heartbeat where you've got your clear things that you should be focusing on. Because a lot of players were kind of talking about how at a certain point in the game they didn't really know what was the good thing to do. So, I mean, the base defenses, once we start getting those in, are going to make a huge, huge difference. But I'm really hoping that this gas facility buff is going to really improve the kind of the structure of the game, and it's going to, yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be a positive change. Basically, each time the facility activates, the buff becomes more powerful as well. So later into the game, the more it affects things, so the more advantage. So each time it activates, in theory, it's even more important that you get it this time.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. Any more questions out there? We'll do a couple more, I think.
Yeah, what is the frigate supposed to from Zero? What is the frigate supposed to be? Dog pack ship to hunt? Sorry, to the hunter's lone wolf? Annoying gnats that's supposed to stay near the flagship? Or
very good question.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. There's a lot of talk about the frigate and what it is and what it could be, whether it's a scout, whether it's, like you say, an annoying fly. What is it? Actually, you've had more conversations with it more recently. Yesterday was a lot.
When I play it, I find it plays best as an annoying gnat. It's a really fast, speedy ship, so you can kind of evade an awful lot of fire. You can poke people a little bit with your weedy little cannon, but right now it doesn't feel like a support ship. I'm kind of campaigning to push it into the role of a scout ship, so I think I'd really like to kind of look at maybe introducing some abilities that focus around providing vision for the team or providing speed buffs for the team. And I think the frigate is a prime candidate for trying out the jump beacon thing that I want to introduce once we get the map screen in and we have more advanced jumping options. So I really like the idea of it being a scout. It feels like a scout to me now, but it needs more.
Needs abilities.
It needs more scouty abilities. I think I think it would work really well as a scout.
Yeah. I also, tell us what you think. I know, Zerid, you can jump on the forums, have a chat about it, but like, where could the frigate go? Seems like a good thread on the forum for people to dive in and give us some feedback. Because certainly we've all got sort of mixed opinions, but we all know it's not quite right. I mean, its mines are more like space grenades that kind of don't really work as mines. Mines, proper mines. We've talked about proper mine layers with proper mines, and I think they'll own that. So it feels like it's something that's not right for the frigate either. So yeah, you're absolutely right to pick on the frigate and go, what is it? Because I think that's what's talked about here, almost daily. Okay.
Okay, we're waiting on the last two questions, if there are only the last two questions. Since the raffle totally failed to work, would you, between the two of you, like to decide on a number between 1 and 5?
2.
Let's go with that.
Okay, then congratulations, Dr. Jason. I'll get you out of the in a moment.
There you go. Well done, Doc Jason.
Woo.
Okay, does that mean we haven't got any more questions?
No, we've got one more.
All right, one more. Okay, let's do it.
The last question from Dead. Whether the ship function to send their fighters to capture one of the bases.
So fighters capturing.
Well, ultimately, what we're aiming to do is the actual capturing of bases will be contextualized by. You'll have like little kind of landing ships that will then kind of you'll send in your Marines down into the base, and they'll be what's actually capturing it.
Boarding parties.
Yeah,
that's
boarding
the way
parties.
I look at it.
Yep,
boarding
exactly.
parties.
So when you can eventually, once you guys kind of approach a station, we might even totally remove the visualization of the capture zones. I'm not sure whether we'll need that eventually. We'll have to have other ways of communicating the ownership of the bases, but yeah, as you approach the stations, your little boarding ships will start coming out, and then they'll land, and that will be the way you're actually capturing the stations. At the moment, we've just got this kind of abstract capture bar, but yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about doing.
And there's been discussion with the whole sort of carrier class as whether it might have different roles of fighters on it. And we talked about ships which actually have a boarding party bias. They actually have. They are chock full of boarding parties and Marines and dropships, and that's actually one of the good things about them is they're really good at that role. It doesn't specifically answer your questions. It's more giving a bit of a direction about where this is headed. Because right now the fighters that say the flagship produce are supposed to be fighters for attacking other capital ships. Obviously, at some point, fighters will attack fighters, and fighters will remove fighters from other capital ships, things like that as well. But fighters, those specific fighters, aren't really intended for doing that sort of dropship boarding party action. They will come in time and be their own thing.
I think the dropships will be in addition to any fighter abilities. Each ship will have its dropships, and certain ships will have more dropships because they're better at capturing. Kind of thing.
I think that's it. Okay, so.
Okay then.
Just to recap then, in case anyone hasn't heard this, we will be streaming tomorrow evening for the playtest, when you're welcome to come play with us. You will have James on camera and watch him play as well. Amazing skills in the game, and thank you for watching. Sorry for technical difficulty and all the other bits and pieces. We are still getting up to that. So thanks to any last thoughts?
We'll be doing this. We won't be doing this in 2 weeks because that would be Christmas Eve, and that would be we won't be here doing this. But back on the 7th of January, so do queue up questions. I think we've lined up James Gilby, who's the main gameplay programmer. So you've seen him chatting away on forums under his tag, which is. No, that's not right. That's Jim. It is James Gilby.
Oh,
Stanith. There you go. So if you see Stanith on the forums, he will be here to chat. So do think about questions for him. I know January, mind you, early January feels like a long way away, so don't feel too pressure for that. Line up questions for Bungle, and we'll be back then doing Q&A then. And by then we'll have had a whole new, quite big update, so there'll be lots to chat about. But do watch us. Thursdays are the main play time. Certainly for when we've organised play sessions, we're going to see if we can work out some other different schedules for strong play times in different regions as well, so that people can gather as communities to play together at certain times. And I think that's about it from me tonight.
Yep. I'll just say, well, I'm checking the forums daily, trying to reply to anything that is within my sphere of knowledge. So yeah, I'm Willis on the forums, and yeah, if you want to discuss anything to do with the map design and game mode, and you've got any ideas, then throw them at me. I'm all ears.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much. I think that's it for tonight.
Request for support. Please comply. The enemy has detected us. We request you fall into formation. Request for support. We are ready to launch.